There's a specific kind of person who stops replying to group chats around Thursday, not because they're mad, not because they're busy, but because they can already feel the weekend approaching and they know exactly where they want to be. Home, alone, and they're not apologizing for it. If hearing "want to hang out" fills you with more dread than excitement, if you've ever lied about being sick just to stay in, if your idea of a perfect Friday night involves nobody else's schedule but your own, this is for you. Because the psychology behind why some people love staying home isn't what most people think. It's not laziness, it's not depression, and it's definitely not fear. It's something far more intentional. Let's start with what actually happens to your nervous system when you're around people. Because even if you like someone, even if the conversation is good, your brain is still working. You're reading tone, adjusting your volume, monitoring how you're being perceived, deciding when to laugh, when to talk, when to just nod and smile. Social interaction, even enjoyable social interaction, is performance, and performance requires energy. For some people, that energy expenditure is worth it because being around others recharges them. Extroverts literally get energy from external stimulation. The noise, the movement, the unpredictability, it activates their reward system. But for others, that same stimulation is depleting, not in a dramatic way, just in a quiet, cumulative way that builds until all they want is silence and their own space. Psychologists call this arousal regulation. Your nervous system has an optimal level of stimulation where it feels most comfortable. Some people need a lot to reach that level. Others need very little. And if you're someone who needs less, the world doesn't just feel overwhelming. It feels unnecessarily loud. Going out isn't relaxing. Coming home is. But there's a second layer here that most people miss. Staying home isn't just about avoiding stimulation. It's about reclaiming control. Because out there, in the world, you don't control much. You don't control who shows up. You don't control when plans change. You don't control the volume of the music or the temperature of the room or whether someone's going to corner you into small talk about nothing. But at home, you control everything. The lighting, the sound, the pace. Whether you eat now or later. Whether you're alone or not. Whether you speak or stay silent. For people with anxiety or high sensitivity or a history of environments where control was taken from them, that autonomy isn't a preference. It's a psychological need. Home becomes the only place where their nervous system can actually rest. And here's where it gets interesting. People who genuinely enjoy being alone aren't just avoiding the world. They're engaging with something most people never access, their internal world. The one that doesn't need external validation to feel real. The one where thoughts can finish forming without interruption. Where ideas don't have to be immediately explained or defended. Where you can just exist without an audience. Research shows that people who spend time in solitude, chosen solitude, not loneliness, tend to be more creative, more self-aware, and better at complex problem solving. Because creation doesn't happen in noise. It happens in the space between distractions. The writer doesn't finish the book at the party. The thinker doesn't solve the problem in the crowd. The artist doesn't create in chaos. Staying home isn't doing nothing. It's doing the kind of work the world doesn't see. But let's be honest about something else. Society doesn't reward this. We live in a culture that celebrates being out there. The people who post their lives. The ones who are always available, always social, always on. And if you're not that, if you're the person who turns down invitations without guilt, there's this quiet pressure to justify it, to prove you're not depressed. To prove you're not scared, to prove you're still living. But here's the thing, you don't owe anyone an explanation for how you recharge. You don't owe anyone access to your time just because they offered it. And you definitely don't owe anyone proof that your version of happiness is valid. Because the truth is, a lot of people who are always out aren't actually happy. They're just afraid of being still. Afraid of what they'll hear if the world gets quiet. Afraid that if they stop performing, they'll stop mattering. You're not afraid of that. You've already made peace with stillness. You've already learned that you're enough company for yourself, and that's not sad. That's rare. Now, there's a distinction we need to make, because staying home out of choice is very different from staying home out of avoidance. One is restorative. The other is hiding. If you stay home because it fills you, because it gives you energy, because you genuinely prefer your own company, that's healthy solitude. But if you stay home because leaving feels too hard, because social situations trigger panic, because you've started to believe the world is safer when you're not in it, that's isolation. And isolation isn't peace. It's a cage you're pretending to choose. So ask yourself this: when you're home, do you feel alive or do you just feel less anxious? Because one of those is self-care. The other is self-protection that's gone too far. And only you know which one it is. But for those who truly love being home, who aren't hiding but choosing, there's a richness to how they experience life that other people miss. They notice things. The way light moves across a room at different times of day, the specific comfort of a routine, the satisfaction of a quiet morning, the deep rest that comes from not having to be anything for anyone. These aren't small pleasures. They're the foundation of a life built on presence, not performance. Psychologists have a term for this: low stimulation preference. It means you don't need the world to entertain you. Your inner world is vivid enough. Your thoughts are interesting enough. Your own company is enough. And in a world that constantly tells you you're not enough unless you're doing more, being more, showing more, that's a radical act of self-trust. People who love staying home aren't missing out. They're just selective about what they let in. They've learned that not every invitation is an opportunity, that not every experience is worth the energy it costs. That sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is absolutely nothing that anyone else will ever see. And if that makes you boring to some people, good. Let them think that, because you're not performing for them. You're living for you. And the people who understand that, the ones who don't need you to prove your happiness by broadcasting it, those are the only people worth your energy anyway. So if you're someone who gets genuinely excited about a night in, who feels relief when plans get canceled, who would rather re-watch your comfort show than make new memories with strangers, you're not broken. You're not antisocial. You're not wasting your life. You're just someone who's figured out that home isn't where you hide. It's where you return to yourself. And that's not something everyone understands, but it's something you don't need them to. The world will keep moving, keep demanding, keep insisting that you should want more, but you already know what enough feels like, and it looks like your couch, your corner, your quiet, and that's not settling. That's knowing yourself well enough to protect what matters.